Recording has started. So we want to do the solution to our last assignment. I asked us to build a calculator, a simple calculator. So I'll come here. This is a new React application. I'll delete everything. Here's the React application. Have I started it? Okay. So I created a project called calculator. Like I won't go to the session by I'll start creating this in class because it takes time. So that's why I created this before the class. Let's run it and browser. Okay. So here is it. But I'm deleting everything there now. Inside it. And I'll just put the text. Hello. So let's create our design. Let's just do a small design, then we add the logic later. So let's get a table. In my table, I'm coming. I want to do something similar to this calculator. And this will be like a guide. Design. I just do something like this. Okay. So in our table, we have a row. Inside this row, we have a TD. Inside this TD, we have an input. So this input serves as these parts. This is what here. So we can say, let's get some other TL, another table. Then TD. Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, let's say 4 by 4, okay? So I have a button like this. So 2, 4, like this. So let's run it on the browser and see how it looks like now. So we have this. Let's slide it a bit and change the numbers. I hope nobody is waiting to join. Okay. So 3, can put plus n, 4, 5, 6, can put minus n, 7, 8, 9. We can put multiplication here. Then we can have the division, the deletes, the clear everything, clear. I just use this. Then the equal sign. What else? I think these are those things in our calculator. Okay. So let's move this last one. Then let's give it some styling. I'll go to my app.css. Okay. This app.css. So I'll delete all of these things that we have there. We are not focusing on the styling, because we are not focusing on styling, but we shouldn't go on with something as ugly as this. But let's just do something cool enough. So we can say our table can have let's say a background color of let's say orange, a width, let's say 400 pixel, height, let's make it a square of around 400 pixel. Okay, I think since I got in shape, then let's shift it to the center. So you can say imagine So okay, at the center now. Then let's try to style this input and the buttons too. For the inputs, you can say let's increase the width. Width can be around 80%. Height can be around, that can be 100%. So I think okay, let's look at the inputs too. I think, but this looks too much. Let's reduce the height. Yeah, I think this is fine. But the width is not long enough. Let's make this 100%. Okay. One more thing. I'll come here and say postpan. I want it to cover 4 columns, so I'll set the postpan to 4. Postpan 4. I think this one should be fine now. Okay. So we can come here and change the width to around 80. That should make it perfect. Yeah. So I think this one is nice. Then these buttons, let's adjust them. This equal sign, I also want to run postpan so that the equal sign will cover these 2 parts. So we come here. Someone wants to join. Oops. Postpan 2. Okay, now let's now give it a width and height, these buttons. We come here, let's target our buttons. Button. Add the buttons, let's say they have a width of 70%, which should do. Okay, let's give it height. Height of let's try 50%. Let's see how that looks like. Okay, and this looks nice. Then okay, maybe when we hover, let's give it a bit of hovering. Button. Over a button. Just set the background color to, let's say, red. Okay. Border radius. Set it to maybe 5 pixels. So I think enough of the styling. Let's now go to the logic. So what you want is when you click on this one, you want this one to be displayed inside this place. Oh, let's disable these inputs. I'll come here now and just set it to disable. Okay. So when I click on this, 1 will be displayed in this input. When I click on 2, 2 will be displayed there. 3, on and on like that. So let's start from the first one, 1. I'll come here and say, unclick. And when I click on 1, I want it to display 1 inside that input. So we're going to create a function. Let's call it display 1. Like this. So when we click on this button, we call on this function display 1. Next is, we now want to find a way that this display 1 will display 1 inside this input. Remember I told you that, okay, let's first do it without state so that you see how why you need to use a state. We've looked at that in our last class, but I think this can be an opportunity to go over it again. Let's say var is an empty string initially. Let's var equals to empty string. And inside this place now, I can say value, an input has a value property. So value equals to var. So value will be whatever this is. It's going to be an empty string. So we come here and say var equals to 1. When you run this, when you click on this button, it's going to run this code. Var will be 1. Sorry, someone wants to join. Okay. So when you click on this button, it's going to call on this function, and this will change the value of var to 1. Let's keep the data type. Let's just use this, since this is an empty string. So let's keep this as a string. So this is going to be 1. But the thing is that this input is not going to be updated. Remember I told you in our last class that whenever you want the HTML parts to update a value, look at it. Really, the value of var has changed to 1, but somehow the input is not updated. So from our last class I said whenever you want the HTML part to be updated, whenever the value changes, what you do is that you make it a state. You make it a state. So let's do that together. I'll come here, instead of setting this like this, I will use the let var set var equals to useState. So useState imported and we are using it now. So remember I told you also that this second value, the second value in this array is a method. And the essence of the method is for you to change the value of, to change the first value in that array. The essence of the method is for you to change the first value in that array. So when I click on this button and it calls on this function, I want to change this var to 1. So I need to make use of this set var. I'll say set var, then I'll pass 1. Again, I'll make it a string so that we keep the data type. We use the same data type results. So this changes to 1. Let's run it on the browser and see how this looks like. So when I click, 1 is inside this place. Any questions so far? Can we proceed? Okay. Let's move on. Let's do the same for 2. Let's do the same for 2. I'll create a function similar to this, and I'll call it display 2. Oops, sorry. So I'll create a function similar to this. I'll call it display 2, and I'll use that to handle 2. And click display 2. So when you click on this, it's going to call on this function, and instead of setting 1 now, I'll put 2 there. I'll put 2. So this is going to change the contents. It's going to change the value of var to 2. Now let's run it in the browser. Now this is not what we want, really. I don't want this the 1 to replace 2, and I don't want 2 to replace 1. I want them to be together. That is, if I press 1, 1 should be there. When I press 2, these 2 should not replace the 1. Instead, both of them should be on the screen. So what we can do is we can concatenate them together. We can say that don't erase whatever you have there. Instead, use bring in the present value, add it to whatever you have on the screen. Take the present value, add it to whatever you have on the screen. So that brings us to concatenation. If you don't understand concatenation, I will add a link to one of my recordings of concatenation to this video when I upload it on YouTube. You can check it out. So instead of saying 1 now, we say first get whatever var is, then help us to concatenate 1 to it. So initially, var will start as an empty string. So when I click on this button, it's going to run these codes. To get that empty string plus 1, so it's going to concatenate them together. So it's going to put that on the screen. When I click on 2 now, this is going to call on this function. Then we can now say, help us to get whatever might be there initially and concatenate 2 to it. That becomes var plus 2. So it will concatenate, let's say we initially typed 1, then to concatenate to say that you have 1 and 2 on the screen, and that becomes the new value of var. Let's run it. Okay, yeah, it's working fine. Now, but then we are running into a problem. The problem is that, does that mean we need to create another function for this 3, for this 4, for this plus, for this? When they are doing similar things, what I'm saying is this. Look at this function and this function. They are doing almost the same thing. The two of them, they are doing almost the same thing. They will get the initial value, and this one will concatenate 1. This one will get the initial value, and it will concatenate 2. So whenever your functions, whenever you have 2 or more functions doing similar things, you can easily use parameterized function. So let's make use of that to reduce the number of codes we are going to be writing, the lines of codes that I'll be writing. Because if not, we will need to create another function for 3, for plus, for 4, for 5, for 6, and on and on like that. So what I will do is that I will remove these 2 now, and I'll create a new function. I'll call it const display var, like this. Display var. So this function is going to be a parameterized function. I can say it's expecting a parameter called new var. That is, whenever we call on this function, we should send a value called new var, and we can now say set var plus new var. So if new var is 1, it is going to get the initial value and it will concatenate 1 to it. If new var is 2, it will get the initial value of var and it will concatenate var to it. And keep in mind that whatever you have inside this set var function becomes the new value of var. Please, if you are lost, let me know. Okay, if you are lost with the explanation, let me know. Are we getting it? Are we following? Okay. In absence of question, let's proceed. So next is, instead of calling on display 1, of course we've deleted this display 1. Now we're going to put display var. Display var. And in our last class, I explained to us that whenever you want to call on parameterized function in React, you use your arrow function. Your arrow function will return a new function, then you can now pass a value there. So I can pass 1 here. Sorry, someone wants to join. So your arrow function will return a new function, then you can pass 1 to that function. Same thing for this one too. I can pass 2 like this. So when I click on this button, the first button, this one will be sent as the value of this new var. It will be sent to new var. Then this is going to say var, that is, get the initial value of var, then concatenate it with new var, and that becomes the new value of var. The same thing goes for this. So I'll copy this and paste it in others. So this will be 3. So 3 becomes the value of new var, so concatenate them. Do the same with plus. Four. 5. 6. Minus 7. 8. 9. Multiplication. Then let's do the remaining this. Okay, now these are not, they are working in other ways. So I think we've been able to solve all of this. We can go to the screen now and look at that. So I can say plus 12 is working, multiply by 8 is working, minus this is working. So next is that when I click on this see, I want to clear whatever is on the screen, like empty the screen. I don't want to see anything on the screen again. So let's do that together. So let's create a function called clear screen. Const clear screen. So whenever I call on this function, I want it to set var to empty string, so that once it's an empty string, there will be nothing again on the screen. So I'll just say set var, set it to empty string like this. Scroll down to this place and add it here. And click. That's fine. Okay, so let's go to the browser and see how that works. So when I click on this, it has cleared everything well. I'm not too cool with this. I want it to, instead of clearing the whole screen, just put 0 there, as most calculators do. Just put 0 there. Okay, so let's solve that problem. I'll put 0 here like this. So let's quickly type some values here. And I click on this. Good. It has put 0 there. Let's put 0. Sorry, someone wants to join. Any questions so far? Are we together? Are you getting it?
Yes, sir. No question from my end.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on. So this is going to set it, but then this we are into a mini problem, a small problem now. After clearing the whole screen, once I type any value, now you know it's concatenating that 0 with that new value. If I type the 052, maybe you don't want that to happen. Look at what I'm saying. 1, 2, 3. Once I press this, I have 0. If I press any other value, that's if I press 8 now, it becomes 0, 8. You don't want that to happen. You want it to just be 8, so that 8 replaces that 0. So what you're going to do is that when you click on this button, you come here and you run some conditional statements. Instead of running this now, you can first check that if what you have there is 0, then replace it. Else, we can do this. If var is equal to 0, like this, then just say set var, set it to new var. Else, do this. Else, do this. Okay. So if I clear it now, I have 0. When I put var now, this instead of concatenating it with whatever is on the screen, now since it sees 0, 0 there, that new value becomes, it will be sent here. It's not going to concatenate it with whatever might be there initially. Once it sees that, oh, var is just 0, it's not going to concatenate it. Instead, it will just set it to this place like this. Okay. Now let's look at the equal sign. Let's make that work. Equal sign. So I'll come here and add an event. I'll click. I'll say maybe eval maybe values. So let's create the function called eval values. Like this. Okay, so I want us to evaluate whatever is on the screen. After evaluating it, put the results back into this set val, so that, of course, remember that whatever you pass inside this set val becomes a new value that you see on your screen. So you can say let's maybe calculated values equals to evaluate val. So it's going to evaluate whatever this val is an input function to evaluate val. You can now say set val, set it to the result of that. Oh, I think it's better even call it results. So, like this. So the result of this will now be sent to val. Okay, let's say how that works. 5 minus, let's say 8 equals to this. So this is working. It's working fine. You can clear everything. It 7 minus plus 4 equals to this. So this is working. Let's now check the last part. This deletes. This delete is to delete the last item. Let's say this is what this is doing. Let's say I'm doing this. Now imagine I wanted to type I wanted to type 5, I mistakenly typed 6. So I just want to remove this last character. Remove this last character. So that's what we want to do. This is not working yet. So we can do that this way. And click. And click. So I'll create a function called remove last. So let's go and create the function actor. Remove last. So what this function does is that it removes the last character. If you're familiar with JavaScript, you know the slice method. The slice method easily does that. I can say let's. I think someone is setting up. Oh, you're not seeing anything. Please, can we see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen from my end.
Okay, I think it's maybe it's his network.
Yes, yes.
Okay, I'm not seeing. Probably your network. Sorry. Okay. Now I can say results equals to. Now let's play a bit with JavaScript before we, so that you understand what you want to do. I will use this console here like this. Oh, let's fix this error. See how cannot appear as child to this. Let's fix that part quickly. Okay. Come here. See body. So just cut all of these things. All of this. And put it inside this place. So the error should go now. That's it. Yeah. So imagine I have a string. Let's say I have tire like this. I can say the slice. If I pass this -1, this removes it will remove this. But what this -1 does is that you're saying start slicing it from this part. I can now say, where is it? We have a start and end. A string is more like array of characters in most instances. A string is more like array of characters. So this T is at position 0, we call it index. This A is at index 1, position 1. This Y is at position 2, this E is at position 3, like that. So if I say 0, start at 0, then end at 2. So this first value in slice, the slice is an inbuilt method in JavaScript. It can take two values like this. The first value is the starting point. The second value is the ending point. I'm saying start at 0 and end at 2. But now there's more to it. This second value is non-inclusive. It is non-inclusive. This first value is inclusive. This second value is non-inclusive. What I mean is this. I'm saying start at 0 and end at 2. But because this is non-inclusive, it is not going to include the value at 2. Okay, let me use a longer text. Let me use my surname. So start at 0, end at 4. It's going to include 0, 1, 2, 3, but it's not going to include the value at this position 4, at index 4 itself. So it's going to include 0, 1, 2, 3. That's why you have A, B, I, D here. But it's not including A. This is at index 4. I hope you get the explanation. Do you understand? Are we together?
Yeah.
Okay, so we can now say -1 like this. -1, it means you start counting from the back. This N is at position -1. This U is at position -2. This K is at position -3. So you start counting from the back. So I can say 0 and minus 1. So it's going to add everything except the last character, except the last one like this. If this is Taye, you will not see the Y because of this minus 1. So this is the method we are going to make use of, this slice method. So I'll press this, go to the quotes, to the quotes. So results equals to var dot slice, oops, sorry, var dot slice 0 minus 1. So you can also set var to results like this. So this is going to remove the last character and that will be assigned to this. Then we can now set it here like this. Okay, so let's go to the browser and see if everything is working fine. So I can delete this. Good. Now there's a little issue again. After deleting everything, you should not just delete everything. Instead, you should put 0 there. Don't delete everything. Once you realize that it's the last character, don't delete it, just replace it with 0. So let's solve that. You can say if var.length, length is the number of characters in a string. If you are dealing with a string, number of characters in a string. Now my name is Taye, T-A-Y-E, Taye. So the length is 4. So if the length is of var is 1, oops, it is equal to 1. That is, if it's only one character, if var is just one character, just set it to 0. Set var to 0. So don't remove it. Instead, set it to 0. Else, do this. Slice it and set var like this. Okay. So I think should work fine. So I can now delete. No, this is working fine. Last time, when I refresh, maybe at the beginning, I don't want this. I want it to put 0 there at the beginning. Even like that is once I get to the page, I want to see 0 inside this input. So I'll come here and just set the initial value to 0. So that should solve that part. So this is just a simple calculator. We are done with that part. Any question? Okay. In absence of question, I will stop the recording, then we can start today's class proper.